He woke in the middle of the street. The air was gray, not with fog, but with stillness. Dust floated where sunlight should have been, and the wind, though it touched his face, made no sound. The man, whose name, for now, was just a whisper inside his mind, stood slowly and looked around. Buildings rose like petrified trees, tall, motionless, each window blind with grime. Cars stood abandoned at angles, doors open, keys still in ignitions. A newspaper drifted across the asphalt, its pages yellowed and fragile as wings. He picked it up. No date. No words. Just a blank sheet. He spoke aloud to test the air. "Hello." The sound fell flat. No echo. As though the city had swallowed his voice whole. He felt no hunger, no thirst. Only an ache, a need to know. He began to walk. The first house he entered was small, suburban, untouched by time. The door creaked open too easily, as though it had been waiting for him. Inside, the scent of iron and old wood. A clock on the wall ticked in irregular beats, slower than it should. On the kitchen table sat a bowl of apples, perfectly red, perfectly round, untouched by rot. He reached out. His fingers trembled. When he picked one up, the fruit was cold as stone. He dropped it. The apple hit the floor with a hollow metallic sound, rolled to a stop, and cracked open. Not flesh inside, but a mirror, thin as glass, reflecting his pale, uncertain face. He stared at his reflection. The eyes that looked back were his, and yet something else lingered behind them. A shadow. A second self, watching. He explored the rooms. A child's bedroom. Toys arranged neatly, bed made. On the nightstand, a music box shaped like a moon. He turned the key. The melody was warped, hesitant, as though remembering how to be a song. It played just 3 notes, then stopped. He lifted the lid again. Inside was a small scrap of paper, folded into a square. He opened it. A single sentence, handwritten in black ink. "Don't let them find your name." The words crawled beneath his skin. He turned toward the window and saw that the street outside had changed. The cars were gone. The streetlight now bent like a question mark, and the sky had darkened without warning. He whispered, "Where am I?" And for a moment, just one, he thought he heard a reply. A voice, faint and dry as wind through bones. "Home." He stumbled back. His breath quickened though the air remained still. He ran from the room, through the hall, and into what must have been the living room, but the space was different now. The walls were wider, stretching outward, bending into an impossible curve. The furniture was gone. The air hummed, low and steady, like a faraway engine. On the wall opposite him hung a painting, a portrait unfinished. It showed a man standing in an empty street. The same street. His street. The man in the painting wore his coat, his shoes. Only the face was missing, left blank, the brushstrokes swirling in pale circles, waiting for a shape. He took a step closer, then another, and the moment his shadow touched the frame, the painting sighed. The sound was soft, almost gentle, but with it came a sudden vibration, a shiver through the floorboards. Dust fell from the ceiling. The clock in the kitchen began ticking rapidly now, the rhythm uneven, desperate. He backed away. The walls pulsed faintly, as if the house were breathing. Then the door slammed shut. He tried to open it, it wouldn't budge. He turned back toward the painting, and now, where there had been no face, there were eyes. His eyes. Wide. Staring. Painted in. A whisper rose from the corners of the room. "You shouldn't have come in." The voice seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. It moved like mist, sliding between the walls. He felt his pulse climb. "What is this place?" he demanded. The whisper replied, softer now, almost pitying. "The city remembers what we forget." The lights flickered, though he hadn't noticed any before, and the air grew heavy, thick with the smell of rust and rain. Then silence again. A deep, living silence. He sat down. He had no other choice. His legs felt weak. He closed his eyes and tried to remember how he had come here. There was nothing. No journey. No waking. Only this gray light, the soundless street, the hollow fruit. He reached into his pocket.
Inside, a key.
Old, ornate. A symbol etched into its handle, a circle broken by a single line. He didn't remember owning it, but he knew it was meant for a door. He looked around the room again. The house seemed calm now, as though nothing had happened. The painting blank once more. Yet something in him knew it wasn't over. The city was not dead, it was waiting. Watching. He stood, walked back to the door, and tried the key. It didn't fit. But as he turned the knob, the door opened easily this time, and outside, the street had changed again. The buildings were closer. The sky had lowered, pressing down like a lid. And in the far distance, through the veil of gray air, he saw movement. A figure.
Standing.
Waiting for him. He called out, though he knew it was useless. Still, the figure turned. And as it did, he felt something shift inside his chest. A recognition, cold and certain. He didn't know who the other was. But he knew that it knew his name. The words from the note echoed again in his mind. Don't let them find your name. He took one cautious step forward. The city made no sound. Then another. And when he reached the corner where the figure had stood, it was gone. But written on the wall beside him, in black dust, were 3 words. Welcome back, Eli. He froze. Because that was his name. The name he hadn't remembered until now, his name, Eli. Hung in the air like breath on cold glass, fading but not forgetting. He stood before the wall where the words had been written in black dust and rubbed his thumb across the letters. The dust did not smear. It flaked off in perfect, paper-thin curls, like old paint or snakeskin. Beneath it, the wall was not brick at all, but a layer of polished stone, dark and reflective. His face, tired, angular, startled, looked back at him. Behind it, the street stretched into a hush that had no horizon. Eli, he said softly, tasting the syllable. A key that fit the lock of his throat. Silence accepted the word like a tithe. He retraced his steps. The first house stood as he had left it, door ajar, the quiet breathing of a place that felt recently occupied by a memory. He considered returning inside, to test the painting, to search for more messages tucked into music boxes. But another pull had fastened itself to him, steady as a current under black water. The figure he had seen, the certainty that it knew him, drained warmth from his bones. Whoever, whatever it was, it had spoken through dust. The city was a mouth, and the house ahead, with its door half open and its windows clouded with old fingerprints, was an ear. He went toward it. The house announced itself with a smell, rain that never landed, rusted kettle, paper that had learned to breathe. As he crossed the threshold, the temperature shifted. The air inside was cooler, the silence denser. He felt it sitting on his shoulders, a shawl woven from the same thread as night. The hall was narrow and paneled with dark wood that had once been polished to a sheen. Now it was scabbed with scuffs, secret scratches. Eli ran his fingers along the grooves. Letters, cut shallow by a small blade.
A. E. L. I.
He paused. Not his name in order, just its bones scattered. He pressed his thumb into the L until it hurt. Something whispered at the edge of hearing, a far-off murmur like the echo of traffic. But there were no cars. There were no people. The echo, then, belonged to something else. He found the source in the parlor. An old radio, the kind with dials like the wrists of clocks, cloth speaker frayed like moth wings. It was on, though the cord dangled free. From its belly came a faint, arrhythmic hiss, and beneath it, as if it were the skeleton of sound, a voice. Lee? Eli? Do not turn the dial. He froze. The radio did not glow. The dial did not move. And yet the voice, dry leaves on glass, threaded the silence and tied a knot around his chest. He reached out with the caution one uses to touch a sleeping animal. His fingers never made contact. The radio exhaled a different voice, low, masculine, familiar as thunder heard from bed.
Eli.
If you hear me, if anything hears me, find the House of Echoes. Close the shutters before night. The message ended with a click that had no mechanism. The hiss remained. He ran his palm over his jaw, felt stubble like fine sand. The term, House of Echoes, sat neatly on the house around him, as if it had been engraved there long ago. He glanced at the windows. The shutters were open, slatted wood so thin he could have snapped them with 2 fingers. They trembled slightly. Not from wind. There was none, but from the effort of remembering movement. He latched them, one by one. With each click, the room darkened, not by degrees, but by breaths. When the last shutter closed, the house seemed to exhale, relieved. Across from the radio stood a bookcase. The books had no titles on their spines. Each volume wore a jacket of smooth, dark cloth that drank light. Eli pulled one at random. It fell open to the middle where a ribbon had been laid like the line of an incision. No words, no pictures. Yet beneath his fingers, the page felt engraved. He tilted it and saw faint gouges, as if the letters had been written with a dry stylus, text without ink. He brought it closer and, by the door's meager light, deciphered the impressed shapes. Your name is a door. Close it or they come in. His throat tightened. He turned the page. Another impression, deeper now, as if written in urgency. We anchored the city with silence. We peeled sound from things and stitched a quiet skin. But names are sound's bones. Break them, and something enters. The book shivered in his hands. He laid it back, gently, as if it could bruise, and stepped away. His eyes adjusted to the room's lightless geometry, a piano against the left wall, its lid closed, a mirror above the mantel draped with a veil of gray netting, the radio breathing like a creature pretending to sleep. He approached the piano. When he raised the lid, the smell of iron ran over his tongue. The keys were ivory, yellowed and hairline cracked. He pressed one. It depressed without resistance and did not return. No notes sounded. Instead, from the hall behind him, a stair creaked as if under the weight of a careful foot. He did not turn. He pressed another key. It sank and stayed. Another stair creaked, higher this time. He closed the piano lid gently, as if to avoid waking something already awake, and walked into the corridor. The staircase turned once and then vanished into a landing wrapped in shadow. On the wall, at the curve of the turn, hung a series of small frames. Each held a scrap of paper with a letter on it, calligraphed in a hand that had known patience. Again, the bones of his name. But there were other frames as well, their glass empty, their hooks bent as if something had torn free. He climbed. The air thinned around him, not as an altitude, but like a fabric being pulled across his mouth. At the top, a hallway with 3 doors, one closed, one ajar, one open and dark as a well. Eli chose the ajar door. The room within was a study. Desk, chair, lamp. The lamp was lit without bulb or flame, a softened glow held in a glass belly, like a jar of warm milk. On the desk lay a leather-bound ledger. He opened it to the last page that held ink. City Ledger, Archive 3. Recorder, IL. Date. Entry. We have reached the threshold. Names cannot be spoken aloud. Even thinking them sharpens the black attention. Children learn to hum the gaps. The bell ringers sleep with wax under their tongues to dull dreams. If you find this ledger, please read aloud silently. The city listens with walls. Read aloud silently. He smiled despite himself. He did as the words asked. Letters sank into him like stones into water. The entry continued. They warned us that the city would learn us, that it would organize our lives by our voices the way a librarian sorts by spines. We had no choice. The sound kept coming, murmurs through the pipes, whispers under the floors, the long vowels of our names lingering in the mouths of doorways. We made echo houses to hold the noise. We poured our voices into the rooms like a cure into a wound. The houses thickened. The streets learned the pace of our feet. But the archivist wrote of another thing, a listener behind listening, something that lives on the underside of echoes. It is hungry for proper nouns. It eats the shape of a person and leaves the outline walking. The ledger trailed off into a series of ink dots like crumbs. Eli touched the initials, IL. They woke a chill beneath his ribs. He didn't know why, but he felt sure those initials were not a stranger's. When he closed the book, a low ringing reached him through the house. Not sound precisely, but the sensation of sound, like the memory of a bell. It came from the open door at the far end of the hall. He crossed to it. Inside, a bedroom, austere. A bed made with gray blankets that looked like smoke pressed into cloth. A wardrobe with a mirror in one door. The mirror showed him in pale relief. There were no objects to anchor the person inside it. No photographs on the dresser, no trinkets, no jewelry dish holding the ghost of a ring. Time had been kept here by subtraction. The bell memory came again, stronger, and he realized it was not coming from this room, but through it. He opened the wardrobe. The mirror resisted, stuck at the seam, then gave with a sigh. The back of the wardrobe was not wood. It was a door, smaller than a person, large enough for a secret. Its handle was a circle broken by a single line. He held his breath. His hand found the key in his pocket, as if it had been waiting to be found. The metal was cold, colder than the house, colder than the air. It fit the door as if the lock had been built around the key's negative. He turned it. Night moved on the other side. A short staircase descended into a small chamber where the house's bones were exposed. The ribs of beams, the spine of a central pillar. In the center stood a bell on a wooden frame, not much larger than a heart. Woven around its crown were long shreds of fabric, names embroidered into each in the same patient hand as the frames along the stair. He slid closer. The embroidery thread was black. The names were almost invisible until the light tilted them toward Mercy. Alice, Eli, Isla, Leah. The letters repeated and recombined, anagrams of a single root. The bell itself was smooth, uncorroded, as if a hand polished it nightly. He did not strike it. He did not touch the braided rope that hung beside it. From somewhere above, the radio's hiss became a steady breathing. Beneath it, a whisper with a tired rhythm of someone speaking in their sleep. If you ring the bell, turn your face away. Eli felt the war in his mouth, the desire to test a rule and the knowledge that the rule had been stitched from blood. He looked at the bell, then at the woven names, then at the stair back up to the wardrobe. The whisper continued, threadbare now, frayed into syllables. Don't let them find your name. The first house's note, rewritten into the marrow of this place. He climbed. He closed the wardrobe, left the chamber and its patience behind. The ledger under his arm felt heavier now, as though the words inside had thickened with understanding. Back in the hall, he noticed an absence. The open door at the end was no longer open. It was a wall, seamless, smooth, as if the door had never been. The house rearranged itself when not watched, like a cat closing its eyes to pretend no one can see it. He addressed it with a half-smile he didn't feel. All right, you keep your tricks. The house, being a house, offered no reply. But from the parlor, the radio suddenly spat a burst of snow, a sound like 1,000 moths panicking at once. Then, a voice he recognized without recognizing.
Eli.
The living map is gone. It walks on 2 legs. It wears an outline and no face. Do not give it more than you must. He went cold. The painting in the first house, the faceless man on the street. Had the outline stepped down from its frame? Was the city filling it, slowly, with his features the way water fills a print in sand? He returned to the parlor. The lamp's glow was dimmer now, more amber than milk. The radio had fallen quiet, but the sense of a message remained, as one remembers the warmth of a hand that has just left one's shoulder. He turned to the draped mirror above the mantel. The netting waited like a promise. He lifted it. The glass showed a room like his, but not his. Same mantel, same radio, same piano with its sunk keys, but in the mirror, everything was older by a fraction of a second. Dust motes fell, with a slightly different patience. He watched himself lean in. The man in the mirror did the same. Except no. He raised a hand. The mirror's Eli did not. The mirror held itself. Then it smiled at him with a mouth he knew too well. Back, the mirror said, though its lips did not move. The sound came the way the radios did, through the house's breath. Welcome back, Eli. He had nowhere left to go but forward, and forward here was past. He spoke to himself as if to a stray dog. What did I do? The mirror Eli tipped his head, listening to a question that had already been asked. You opened a door in a city that was a door. And the people? They put themselves where the sound cannot chew them. In ledgers. In echoes. In things that look like nothing. Some forgot on purpose. Some forgot by accident. Some are forgetting even now. Eli thought of the apple with a mirror inside, the music box with its 3 notes, the painting with its hungry eyes. Disguises for presents. They left me messages, he said. They left you your message, the mirror corrected. Look in the ledger. Last page. The ink you can't see. He laid the book on the mantel and fanned to the back. The final pages were blank, as before, save for the engraved indents. He brought the paper near the lamplight, then farther. Nothing rose out of whiteness. He breathed on it. His breath clung to the fibers, letters lifted like bruises under skin. If you are reading this, you have already returned. You thought you could keep your name in your mouth like a coin, but names heat with the body and stain the teeth. They will smell it. If you are reading this, listen. There is a second city under the first. You can hear it when you close your eyes to swallow. That flick is the hinge. Do not mistake noise for company. You will want to call the outline by yours.
Don't.
Give it half a letter if you must. The rest keep turned inward like a pocket.
E.
E, not IL. The ledger had 2 hands. Eli pressed his finger into the signature until the paper almost broke. He remembered nothing he could trust, but some part of him recognized the way the letter was formed, the weighted downstroke, the stingy tail. The radio hissed approval, or wind, or static, pretending to be applause. Then a second sound entered the house, foreign as a bird. Footsteps on the porch. Not an echo, not a house-settling sigh. A rhythm with weight, human cadence, or an exquisite imitation of it. Eli switched off the lamp, though there was no switch, only an agreement that there would be less light. He moved back from the mirror, which resumed its role as glass. The footsteps stopped at the threshold. A hand tested the door and found it locked from the inside. A voice, polite and papery. Mr. Lane? Eli did not breathe. The name folded inside the name.
Lane.
L-A-N-E. Rearrange the bones and it spells E-L-I-A-N. He could taste the trick. Someone had smeared honey on a bear trap. Mr. Lane. The voice continued, pleasant but with the dryness of something long dehydrated by the sun. You left your shutters open on the back windows. The night will arrive soon. Eli glanced toward the passage that must lead to the kitchen. The shutters there were, as he'd left them, latched. The lie wore a uniform and knocked with knuckles that did not bruise wood. He went to the door as quietly as he could. Through the peephole, a circle of dark, quicksilvered glass, he saw the outline of a man in a long coat the color of dusk. No face, not even the suggestion of features. Where the head should have been, the blur of movement without detail, like fog stirred by a spoon. Mr. Lane, the outline said, amiable, almost embarrassed by its persistence. I won't take your time. I only need to hear you say you are all right. Eli said nothing. He put his ear to the wood. He heard a sound he had not expected, breathing, but not made by lungs. Something turned in and out with exquisite patience, like a bellows inflating the idea of a chest. Names, the ledger had said, are sounds bones. He went backward, step by careful step. The outline did not knock again. It waited, as if waiting were as nourishing as food. The radio's hiss died to a thread. From the back of the house came a third sound, a soft tapping at a window. He moved through the kitchen, past a table set for no one. 2 plates, 2 cups, 2 silver knives that had forgotten sharpness. At the sink, a window looked out on a yard overgrown with a kind of grass that looked like hair. The shutter was latched. The tapping came from beyond it, light as fingertips on water. Eli, a child's voice said through the slats, not muffled at all. They said I should come, because you would open for me. He felt his heart knock once against his ribs, and then stand very still. The voice found what it needed in his chest and echoed once. The music box had played only 3 notes. This voice had learned them and made a melody. He was thirsty. The first thirst he had felt since waking. The cupboard held glasses. He took one, set it on the counter, and watched it hold the room. "Eli," the child said again, as if practicing. "It's Isla. Do you remember me?" The braid on the bell, the name in the ledger, the letters in the frames. He did not open the shutter, but he did lean forward, lips close to the wood, and exhaled the faintest wisp of breath. The shutter tasted him. It shuddered with the greed of an addict. "Isla," he said, as if contradicting himself. "If you are Isla, tell me the 4th note." A pause. The grass in the yard flexed. The shutter listened. "Eli," the voice said, brighter now, triumphant with borrowed light, "the 4th note is your name." He backed away from the window so fast the glass rattled, and then went very still. The outline on the porch spoke again, this time very gently, as if to a sleeping fever. "Mr. Lane, I'm afraid the night has arrived." The house darkened. The shutters drew their slats closer, suddenly careful as eyelids. In the parlor, the radio breathed in and did not breathe out. Eli went to the wardrobe. He opened the mirror door, set his hand on the cool seam of the secret steps. The chamber below seemed to pull him. Not a wish, but a gravitational fact. He descended and stood with the bell. Names wrote the rope like veins. He put his palm lightly on the metal. It hummed under his skin without moving. "If you ring," the radio had sighed, "turn your face away." He did not ring. He pressed his ear to the bell's lip and listened. The bell did not sing. The bell remembered. He heard, all at once, laughter. This room had once held sunlight and the delicate chaos of a morning. He heard cough, someone had been ill. He heard, at last, a footstep that had learned how to land without telling secrets. The bell had been used not to summon but to collect. He straightened. His hand still on the cool metal, he spoke with the caution of a man negotiating with a god. "Take my outline," he said softly. "Keep it here for one night. If it comes for me, let it mistake the shape you hold." The bell did not answer. It did not need to. It stilled, and its stillness accepted a burden. He climbed up. He shut the wardrobe door and watched the mirror seal itself over the seam. The house's lights, whatever made them, lowered to the tone of candlewicks dreaming of heat. At the front door, the outline had changed its posture. It leaned closer, its knot face nearly touching the wood. Through the peephole, Eli saw the place where a mouth would be open like an invitation. "Mr. Lane," it rasped. The politeness had worn thin. Hunger leaked through like damp. "Let's help each other. Give me a letter. I need so little. Just one from the middle. The rest you can keep." He thought of the ledger's instruction, "Give half a letter if you must." The outline's patience pressed against the wood, a tide that would eventually rot the boat. He made a decision like cutting a rope. He cupped his hands around his mouth and spoke into them, as if handing himself a fragile insect. He breathed. Not even a vowel. The smallest dash of sound. He pressed it beneath the door, with the care of smuggling a spark. The outline shuddered. For a moment, the porch became a throat. The sound he had given a fragment, a splinter, was swallowed greedily. Silence jumped back into the space it left. "Thank you," the outline said. Not to him, to the door. Gratitude given to wood. It withdrew, unwilling for now to test the house's rules. Eli watched its absence the way one watches a stain, not moving, but spreading. He waited. Houses have their own clocks. He trusted this one's. He wrote, "I will go to the square at midday. The clock there will not ring, but its shadow will. I will stand in the tone, and if I have a shadow left, it will show me which part of me is still mine. If not, I will ask the bell to remember me harder." He signed it with a shape that was not a letter, a mark like a broken circle interrupted by a line, the symbol on his key. The mark looked like a wound closing. Dawn came without light. It came as a loosening of the city's throat. Things that had been clenched released a fraction. The house lifted its shutters, not all the way, but as far as good manners required. Eli opened the front door. On the porch, A gift had been left, a small paper bag, oil damp, tied with a ribbon woven from gray hair. He did not touch it. He tilted it with a toe. Inside, something rolled. A marble, perhaps, or an eye of glass. He kicked the bag into the street. It fell without weight and made no sound when it landed. The outline was gone if it had ever been. He breathed the morning and let it choose him. The street's geometry had shifted overnight. The buildings leaned, confiding. He walked toward the heart. Along the way, he passed houses with their own bells, each hidden in different places. One in a stove whose burners were sealed with wax. One in a bathtub where the faucet had been replaced with a bronze mouth. One in a closet whose clothes whispered to one another in the language of fabric. The city had built itself into an instrument and then muted itself to avoid hearing its own music. He reached the square. The clock tower rose as if it had grown from a buried seed, stone petals teared with patience. The hands on its face were not pointing at numbers. There were no numbers. The hands pointed at letters, A, E, L, I, around and around. At the base of the tower, a fountain lay dry. Coins glittered at its bottom, iridescent as fish. He crouched and reached for one. Each coin bore the same emblem, a broken circle with a single line. He wanted to see the back. He flipped one over. It had no back, only more front, a coin that could not be reversed. He stood in the center of the square where the shadow of the tower traced across. He waited for noon, and the bell he could not hear. When the moment arrived, he did not know it by sound. He knew it by the taste of metal in his mouth and the way his bones listened. The square deepened by a near-invisible shade. Pigeons he had not noticed before took off in a choreographed panic, filling the sky with the thought of wing beats. His shadow, yes, his shadow leaned a fraction to the right and thinned, as if a hand had pinched it. A line of text slid across the pavement, no larger than a hair, drawn by nothing, readable only because he already knew what it said. He kneeled to bring his eyes close. The letters etched themselves in the dust as if a careful finger were writing with the tip of a nail. There are to you. One must be buried. He swallowed. The word buried folded into his stomach like a knife into butter, vanishing but leaving a shine. He looked up. Across the square, on the far side where the shadow's edge scalloped over stone, he saw the figure again, the outline in the dusk-colored coat. It stood at the mouth of a street that did not exist yesterday. It raised a hand in greeting with the courtesy of a polite predator. Eli did not return the gesture. He turned his back and faced the clock tower, placed his palm against the stone, and whispered into it a vow that had no grammar. I will not let you find my name, he said to the city, or to the thing behind it. I will leave it where even I can't reach it. The stone warmed under his hand, or his hand went numb. He couldn't tell the difference. Behind him, footsteps tapped slow applause. He walked away from the square, away from the outline, into a street where the buildings leaned in narrow curiosity. He chose a house without a bell, one of the new ones, born in the night like mushrooms after rain. Inside, the air smelled of chalk and lemon. The rooms were blank. He lay on the floor and closed his eyes. This time, sleep came. It came like a debt collector, polite, inevitable, dressed in well-made shoes. In the dream, he was not in the city. He was in a field of wheat that had never been harvested. The stalks brushed his shoulders with a sound like pages turning. At the center of the field stood a door. No frame, no house, just a door, painted the deep green of old glass. The handle was a circle broken by a line. He reached for it. The wind gasped. Behind him, someone spoke his name in a voice he recognized as his own, 20 years younger. Eli. He did not turn. Don't, said the younger him, or the field or the door. Not twice. He woke with his cheek against uncarpeted floorboards and the taste of wheat husk in his mouth. The lemon smell had receded, replaced by the slow cooking of dust in sunlight. No, not sunlight. The city's approximation of it. He sat up. The room had gained a window while he slept. Through it, he saw the square with its lettered clock and the outline standing, still standing, as if patience were a kind of immortality. He touched his pocket. The key lay there like a cooled ember. He remembered the bell accepting his bargain. The outline would come and find a shape that was not him. Not exactly. That would buy him this day, and part of the next. After that, the ledger's dots provided no answer. He returned to the House of Echoes as the city's color shifted, not toward night yet, but toward its idea. He closed the shutters, set the ledger on the table, and turned the lamp to its softest hunger. He wrote, "Entry. The outline persists. It wants a letter. It wants my middle, the part that holds a person together." I gave it a dash, an exhale, and it said thank you to the door. I think now that it will mirror what I do with more conviction than a mirror. If I stand still, it learns stillness. If I walk, it learns distance. Tomorrow, I will not move. I will see if it starves. He lifted his pen and hesitated. The radio stirred, as if a listener had shifted under the floor. "Eli," it said. The voice was new, worn cotton, woman's cadence, weary and awake. "If you are Eli, if you hung our names on the bell, you owe us one act of mercy. We are not gone. We are in the quiet. The outline can learn a man by his carefulness. The only thing it cannot learn is what he loves without language. You must find yours and hide it where a dictionary cannot follow." He closed his eyes. What did he love without language? The temptation to say, "my name," was a trick. Names were language made bone. Love without language is the way a hand knows a face in the dark. It is the impulse to cover a sleeping stranger with a blanket. It is the smell of lemon that the house had borrowed and then lost. He opened the wardrobe and descended to the bell. He took from his pocket the coin with 2 fronts and pressed it against the bell's flank. "Remember this for me," he said. "Remember what I do not know how to say." The bell took the coin with the discretion of a confessor. Metal accepted metal. The soundless resonance tightened in the air like a drawn bow. When he rose into the room again, the night had approached the windows without walking.